Before we begin, Zach, I'm just going to reiterate to the listeners on this show, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel because it's going down. Our first topic, we are going to hit our quarterback rankings right now, number 10 through 6. For those of y'all who are new to the show, we've been doing these rankings over the last couple of weeks, top 32, and we have been, chipping away, doing different sets and stuff like that, and, diving into these quarterbacks who we rank thus far. And just a background of my criteria. Zach, I believe I'm up today, so I'm just going to go with my criteria. But before I do, Zach, is there anything you want to tell these people who are tuning in for the first time, and then we can get into it?
Nah, dude, I think you did a good job nailing it right on the head. For the last couple of years on this show, we've been ranking each and every quarterback in the league right before the start of the season, right around this time of year, 1 to 32. And it's pretty cool seeing over time just not only how our own criteria has changed and what we value, but also how individual guys have done. And if our lists in the past have been right, I've said it many times on this show leading up to the segment and going into each time we do this list. My number one goal, my number one priority with this list is when we look back on it in a year or two, maybe even longer, I want to say, oh, okay, I was right on this guy. I kind of saw this guy coming when not a lot of other people did. And the opposite as well. Like, damn, I saw this guy declining when not a lot of people did. And I'm not just saying that because I want to be different or I want to be unique or I want to start conversation. Like, I'm saying that because I really think that guy is going to be that good or this guy is not going to be that good. And I just want to show I'm not afraid to, make a bold prediction or do something different. I feel like a lot of times when people are just ranking quarterbacks, it's just based on their career and what they've done up to this point. And that's fair to an extent. That obviously has a lot to do with where you are on these lists, but I take the future into account as well. I really want to let my mind out and let everyone listening know, like, okay, this is why I think this is why I have this guy right here. And hopefully my logic makes sense to everyone, but I'm looking forward to getting into the top 10 here today. And I'm looking forward to hearing your next set of rankings on your list. Well, let's get into it.
Yeah, man, it's fair to say that these rankings are basically a projection rankings of where we think you're going to be at the end of next season. It's fair to say that to me, right? To the people listening, based on the projections, part of the criteria here. Now, I'm going to recap last week's set. And for those of y'all who are new, Instagram, YouTube, you can find the rest of the quarterback rankings there. Last week at number 15, I had Kirk Cousins at number 15. Number 14, I had Tua. At number 13, I had Jalen Hurts. At number 12, I had Kyler Murray. And number 11, I had Brock Purdy. Now, today, at number 10, and you know what's crazy? In some ways, this guy reminds me of Brock Purdy. In some ways, where I left off last week. They're both pocket quarterbacks. So they don't have the strongest arms. They're not, Lamar Jackson fast and athletic. But what separates this guy that I'm about to reveal from the guy I left off with last week in Brock Purdy is I'm paying homage to the resume here. And that's Jared Goff. I'm going to go with him at number 10. And I think when you look at his resume winning, there's a lot of criteria involved. Eye test, projections, where I think you're going to end up next year. How successful is your offense going to be, right? But we cannot forget the most basic part of sports, which is winning. Okay, we cannot just shove that to the side because, he don't know how to throw the football deep. Because he's not athletic like Lamar Jackson. Okay, to be honest with you, this may be a hot take, Lil. You're right into the gate. You're going to hit him. You going to hit him. I would rather right now. Oh, my God. I can't believe I'm saying this, Zach. I can't believe it. But it just came to me. I'm having a moment right now, Zach.
The light bulb went off.
The light bulb went off. Okay, I'm having an out-of-body experience early in the show, 2 minutes in. I would prefer Jared Goff's career right now over Lamar Jackson. Okay? Give me the visit to the Super Bowl. Give me winning in the playoffs over an MVP or 2 MVPs. Give me that. Okay? And listen, Lamar Jackson is clearly the better player. I ain't rank him yet. He's going to be higher than Jared Goff. I get that point, but I would rather win. You know, and I think we need to remember that winning matters because when you look at the Rams, when he was on the Rams, Jared Goff, I'm talking about here, they was in the abyss. They was in the abyss. And yeah, we give credit to Sean McVay, player. Okay, we give him the credit, okay, for turning water into wine, but we don't give the credit to Jared Goff, who was the guy quarterback in the Super Bowl. There's no shame in losing to Brady. There's no shame in being confused by Bill Belichick's defense. There's no shame in that. Okay, have you ever heard of Peyton Manning? Okay, how he threw interceptions against our defense? I was a Patriots fan. That's what I'm saying. Our defense. Okay, it's no shame. And yet he gets dumped. Jared Goff, you're the reason why we are not winning the Super Bowl. He gets dumped. We thinking his career is over. I saw Lance Stevenson at KP on Monday. We could have saw Jared Goff in a mall like that out of the league. And guess what? Okay, he resurrected his career in Detroit, a team that was not known for winning, a team that was also in the abyss, and he got them to win a daggone division, something they haven't done ever, and won a couple playoff games and got them to a point where if Josh Reynolds catches the daggone football, they are in the Super Bowl. I reiterate my point. I would take Jared Goff's career, hot takey, wakey, shaky. This show is live over Lamar Jackson. With all due respect to Lamar Jackson and what he brings to the table and what he brings to the sport. So winning is why I got him here. I think the Lions are going to be a good team this year. I think they're going to pick up right back where they left off. And a lot of people is probably going to ask me, well, if you think so, if you think they're going to be better than last year, does that mean they're going to get over the hump and get to the Super Bowl? No, it does not mean that. Because I also think the Packers are going to be good. I also think Chicago may have something in Caleb Williams. So just because I think they're going to be a better version of themselves doesn't mean, anything, long term, right? Things could happen. But offense is good. Ben Johnson, one of the best play callers in the league. And Jared Goff is very good with those intermediate short throws. Him with Amon-Ra St. Brown, they know what to do in the middle of the field. I don't think the defense has an answer for that. They got one of the best offensive lines in football. They're going to be able to run the football, utilize the play action, take the shots down the field. And, he could throw the ball deep a little bit, too. I've been seeing some highlights in camp. I like him at number 10. At number 9, I'm going to go with the guy that he was dumped for in Matthew Stafford. And, look, I understand he's not in his peak anymore. He's not in his prime anymore, but you watch the film and this guy can still spin the rock with the best of them. Okay. And, it's funny because you look at Jared Goff and you look at Matthew Stafford, and Matthew Stafford is known to be an elevator. Guys that elevate, a guy that can elevate his roster. A lot of people consider Jared Goff to be the guy that needs a great situation, that needs a star-studded talent. But when you look at Matthew Stafford, he elevates guys. Okay, Calvin Johnson, I believe, had a league-leading year in receptions or yards, one of those two things, right? And then you had Cooper Kupp, who had a triple crown, yards, receptions, touchdowns, right? And then you get this rookie, okay? We don't know this guy's name, okay? I'm not gonna lie, I made fun of this guy's name on the air, okay? Puka Nacua, okay? I ain't know about this cat, okay? I made fun of his name on the air. And by the end of the year, I'm like, oh, Puka Nacua, I know your name, bro. You a legend, my brother. He made that guy break all sorts of rookie records. Matthew Stafford, we got to pay homage to that guy, Super Bowl champion as well, a couple years ago. He makes guys around him better. Okay, he elevates guys. He can spin the rock. He may not be in his prime anymore. Okay, and that's clear. But as long as they're able to keep him upright and healthy, he reminds me of the basketball NBA's version of Anthony Davis. The talent is there, amongst the best in the league when healthy, but the question is when healthy. That's who he reminds me of. The NBA's version of Anthony Davis is Matthew Stafford. And I like him. And one more point I want to make too, because a lot of people is probably going to circle back to this. I can read Zach's mind. Jared Goff won the playoff game over Matthew Stafford. Why isn't Jared Goff higher than Matthew Stafford? Okay, well, this is where the eye test comes into play here with my criteria as well. Yes, Jared Goff won the war, won the battle, or whatever. But when you watch those two guys in that playoff matchup with some of the throws that Matthew Stafford made in that game, it was clear with my own two eyes who was the better quarterback in that game. Now, who won the game is different. It's a team sport. But who was the better quarterback, the more talented quarterback? That was Matthew Stafford. That's why he's higher. I like him at number 9. And at number
One more
8,
thing I'll say on that,
go
too.
ahead.
I just want to bring this up. Week 1, Sunday Night Football, playoff rematch, Rams at Lions. So looking forward to that, too.
Sign me up for that. For sure. At number 8, I'm going to go with the man you see here on this bracket down here. And I'm going to go with Dak Prescott. Now, luckily for Dak Prescott, I am not factoring too much. Now, I am a little bit. Jared Goff is why he's in the top 10. But this is not a total playoff resume here. Luckily for him, because he would not be in my top 10 if it was strictly playoffs. He would not be here. Nowhere close. Okay, but it's not only about playoffs. And to be fair, the Cowboys have not made the NFC Championship game since 1995. I wasn't born yet. With all due respect, I wasn't. Okay, so this is a history thing, but we cannot let Dak off the hook as well, because when it comes down to the playoffs, that's where leaders have to lead. That's where stars have to become superstars. And I have not seen Dak Prescott in the playoffs become a superstar. The best playoff game that I've seen from Dak Prescott is 2 that stands out. One against my Buccaneers when he sent, I don't like to say he sent Tom Brady into retirement. Let's be clear. He was going to retire after that year. He didn't send him to retirement. That's bogus. But Tom Brady's last game was one of those games. And against the Packers a while back, I believe his rookie year. And it's crazy because the first half he struggled. Second half he went off. So I need to see him be consistent in the playoffs. That's what it's about. But when you look at the regular season, last year he had his best year by far. An MVP caliber season. 4,516 yards. 410 completions. Touchdown passes, 36. And I would like to see if he has a new bag of tricks this year with Mike McCarthy. The thing that scares me about the Cowboys this year is the fact that I'm not sure if I could trust their running game. Okay, but they didn't really have a running game last year, so I don't want to look too deep into that. But to have a guy like Ezekiel Elliott as your bell cow, I'm not sure about all that, especially at this stage of his career. But you do got CeeDee Lamb, who's about to get his money. Okay, so hopefully they pay that guy. Hopefully they pay Dak Prescott his money because he's worth his money. And hopefully, I'm closing here with him, he wins in the playoffs, okay? Can you win in the playoffs? All right, if he does that, then Dak Prescott, he'll move up. At number 7, I'm going to go with this guy. Let me pause for a second, okay? I'm going to go with this guy right here. I want to introduce this guy right, okay? There's a lot of hate in this world, okay? A lot of back and forth, all right? A lot of separation. Folks, we need love. We need love. We need Jordan Love. I got him at number 7, okay? From week 10 through the wild card round against Dallas, there was no quarterback better than Jordan Love, okay? He threw for 2,422 yards, 21 touchdowns, and just 1 INT. Now, obviously, the playoffs, the ending, I understand, was spotty. 2 interceptions. You know, the lights got too bright for him, you know, in that moment. But I was proud of what he did last year and how he was able to bounce back. A lot of people look at the inconsistencies of last year, especially in the beginning of the year, but we failed to realize that his running back, Aaron Jones, was out. And the backup running back, my dude from Boston College, A.J. Dillon, wasn't, you know, doing what he used to do back in the day. He's more equipped to be a change of pace back, you know, not the full-time guy, you know. And then they had David Bakhtiari, different guys missing from the O-line. So, you know, those are the things that you need to be put in place to have success. And that's why they started to lose. But once they got everybody back, don't forget Christian Watson was out as well. Once they got everybody back, they was ready to attack. And I feel what made me wake up to the potential that they had and why they were so dangerous last year was that Thanksgiving game where the Lions have all this momentum and hype, and they go into their building. First play of the game, he takes a shot to Christian Watson, set the precedent, and they found something that I thought worked for them, which is attack early against the Chiefs. Sunday Night Football. I want the ball. run a screenplay, get Jordan Love acclimated into the game, into the flow of the game. We're gonna score first. It's Patrick Mahomes. Let's make sure we put up points on the board and then attack from there. So I think if they could adopt that aggressive mentality going forward, I think they could be in games early. I don't think they will trail a lot, and I think they're going to be a good football team this year. I think Jordan Love is going to have an opportunity to accomplish a lot of good things, like winning playoff games, like potentially winning an MVP. That's why I have him so high. So to those y'all people who are looking at me like I got 10 horns sticking out my head because I have Jordan Love at number 7. No, I do not think Jordan Love is the 7th best quarterback in football. I believe that Jordan Love has upside. And when the season concludes, he may just be the 7th best quarterback in football. That's why I have him at number 7. Say what you want about the receivers, Jalen Reed, Christian Watson, who is a de facto number 1, Romeo Dobbs. Listen, we all know that there's a system that Matt LaFleur likes to run. Guys are going to get open. Okay, same thing with Aaron Rodgers. Who was his number 2 outside of Devontae Adams? It didn't matter. Okay, guys was open. Get them the ball. Jordan Love, I feel, will get them the ball, and I feel he will be next year at this point where I'm ranking him right now. At number 6, to close out my list, I'm going to go with Say It Loud. His name is CJ Stroud. I'm going to go with him at number 6. Very impressive rookie year. One of the best I've seen. I always think RG3's was the best I've seen, from a rookie quarterback. But then you also got Big Ben you could sprinkle in. You got Dak Prescott you could sprinkle in. And obviously CJ Stroud. And what's funny was because we was putting him in the MVP conversation at one point last year. Then he gets a concussion, misses 2 weeks. If he doesn't miss those 2 weeks, how are we feeling about him would have grown at that very point in time. But I think he's going to benefit from this one key thing. There's 2 key reasons why Stroud right now has a golden opportunity to steal an MVP this upcoming season, okay? 2 reasons. Number 1, scheme continuity. Bobby Slowick is coming back. Normally when you got guys that have a good year, the coordinators get hired. Oh, because you made him look good. Okay, so I'm going to hire you on my team to help my team out. And now that quarterback who had a good year has to learn a new scheme. Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, the list goes on. I mean, so many. Why did I pick 2? There's like hundreds of examples of that, right? But I'm just going to go with those 2, right? He doesn't have to worry about that this year. Scheme continuity is a big thing. Getting another receiver in Stephon Diggs. Say what you want about Stephon Diggs and the stats last year. They phased him out of the game plan, Buffalo, when Joe Brady took over. He's still one of them ones. He could be a safety net for a guy like CJ Stroud. And most importantly, Tank Dell, who went off last year, Nico Collins, who went off last year, they don't have to have the number 1 or 2 corners on them. That's the biggest thing out of everything. Say what you want about Diggs and whether or not you still think he's in his prime or not, that's fine. But the biggest thing is the decoy, okay? Being able to get those number 1 and 2 corners off of you and allow you to eat. Now, all you have to do is make sure you feed the dog sometimes because he's going to be starving for that bone, as you saw with Josh Allen and company, right? So I think CJ Stroud is going to be in prime position to win an MVP. And I like what he does pre-snap and post-snap, being able to make decisions, pre and post-snap. So he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and I got him as such. So to recap my list, at number 10, I got Dak Prescott. At number 10, I got Jared Goff. I'm looking at Dak Prescott right here. I got Jared Goff at number 10. At number 9, I got Matthew Stafford. At number 8, I got Dak Prescott. At number 7, I got Jordan Love. And at number 6, I got, say it loud, CJ Stroud.
Yeah, well, I figure I have some thoughts on your list. I figured I'll throw them your way, and then we will get into mine. I'll start off by saying this, man. It's interesting that you have Jordan Love and CJ Stroud back to back, as our guy Dujane chips in. We didn't mean to make you feel old, man. Don't worry. I find it interesting though, because
me back to high school.
The Packers and Texans are pretty similar in my opinion, because each team has a young quarterback that at this time last year, at least when I did my list, like they were pretty low towards the rankings of my quarterback list. And then just 1 year later, they're, both in your top 10, which is interesting. And I feel like these two teams are both teams that have a lot of hype. They have heavy expectations. And that was even more bona fide this past week when the Packers decided to give Jordan Love that massive contract. Stroud has only been in the league for a year, so I'm sure he's going to get that one day. But Lil, I'm just curious for you, man. Like, I know we briefly hit on this a little bit last week. Like, when you separate the Texans and the Packers, which team are you more confident in? Which quarterback are you more confident in? Because I found it interesting, too. You said both guys have a real shot, you think, of winning MVP. Do you have a preference when it comes to either one of these two teams or either one of these two quarterbacks going into the season? Do you think both of them are going to live up to those lofty expectations?
Yeah, I think both of them is going to live up to those expectations. It's hard to really separate the two, so I'm going to have to answer that question in a unique angle, because obviously last year, C.J. Stroud was a rookie. So we just got to go off of the year he had and say, well, okay, maybe this year he's going to continue that, right? There's not like a situation like, for example, this is probably cheesy, but Baker Mayfield, where we have a body of work that showed, okay, 1 year he was okay. The other year, it was shit ass. Excuse my language. The other year was really good, won a playoff game, and the other year was trash. And then this year was good. We don't have that body of work. You saw him last year, phenomenal. Can he back that up? With Jordan Love, same thing, because he was buried on the bench. Now, even though he's not a rookie, last year, to me, he was a rookie. It was his first year having the reins to the offense. It was a little bit spottier than C.J. Stroud's, because at times they was losing to the Giants, had no business losing that game. At times, I believe they won the Raiders game, but that game should not have been close.
And, well, no, they lost, and it's funny you said that, too. Yeah. The Texans, don't forget, they lost to the Panthers. I'm pretty sure they lost to the Falcons, too. So both teams had some pretty questionable.
Exactly.
And the Jets, too.
Great point. And the Jets. So they both had questionable losses, right? You don't expect elite quarterbacks to lose certain games. They did last year. So I think this year coming up, it's really the be-all, end-all, tell-all, right? Okay, you're going to show me that you are an elite quarterback, or you both elite quarterbacks. But I think, to answer partially your question, I think Stroud, because of the receivers he has, will be able to. I will bank on him winning that MVP over Love, but I think Jordan Love may go further in the playoffs. I don't want to give predictions here so early, in July, but the way how I'm thinking about the Packers, I'm thinking that they can really accomplish things that other teams will want to accomplish. Like I'm really that high on them. We'll see if I get trigger shot when we get to that moment. But I really think I got big things for the Packers. But I think Stroud will probably win the MVP out the two.
Well, yeah, I mean, according to your rankings, Jordan Love, you have him as the number one quarterback in the NFC. So it's clear your expectations for him are pretty high. Houston as well. Stroud hasn't came up on my list yet. I'm a little more hesitant on Love. Again, I think when people look at my rankings and they see I have Jordan Love at number 17, that's a little uncanny. And I understand that based on how he ended last season. But I think it's also important to remember I literally had him at number 31 on my list last year. So I moved him up 14 spots based on this.
And another thing, too, as I fix my camera, another thing, too, is it's not only the trust that I have in Jordan Love, it's the trust and respect that I have for Matt LaFleur and his play calling. It's a combination of both, because we cannot forget, and I understand, and I hate that we play this game, right? We give leeway to certain guys, and I get it, resume speaks, right? But when Aaron Rodgers, when he took over the coaching gig, let's not forget Aaron Rodgers won 6 games the year before, and he turned that team into a NFC championship title game contending team for the next couple of years. And Rodgers had that spark back to win back-to-back MVPs. So I think there has to be a level of paying homage to Matt LaFleur as a play caller, that he will put a guy like Jordan Love in positions to succeed, like how he did at various points last year.
No doubt, man. Anyway, I think it's a solid list so far. I am looking forward to seeing your top 5 going into next week. But Lil, are we ready for my list to start
sir.
up?
You right up.
Sounds good, man. So to recap last week, number 15 through 10, I started the festivities off last week with a trio of NFC West quarterbacks right off the gate. I had Kyler Murray of the Cardinals at number 15, Matthew Stafford of the Rams at number 14, Brock Purdy of the 49ers at number 13, Caleb Williams, the number 1 overall pick in this past year's draft, had him at number 12, and I had Trevor Lawrence at number 11. So without further ado, it's time to get into it. And at number 10, I'm going to have the guy that both of us are looking at on the graphic right now. You got to go with Dak Prescott of the Cowboys at number 10. And last week, when we did our pay or delay segment, when it came to quarterbacks and the guys that were just about to get paid, it's funny how that works, right? We're ahead of the curve there. We do that segment. And a couple days later, Jordan Love and Tua, two guys we spoke about on the show, both get pretty big contract extensions. But I wasn't shocked by that. I think if you were kind of connecting the dots, the expectation was that Love and Tua were both going to get taken care of sooner rather than later. But I said this on the show last week. I didn't feel the same way about Dak Prescott and him getting paid prior to the start of the season. And the reason for that was because I feel like if Dallas actually planned on paying Dak, they would have done it by now. And it's pretty odd to me that of all of the times to decide not to pay Dak, this is the time Dallas decides, considering he just had a really nice bounce back season. He finished second place in the MVP voting, but I don't think a deal is getting done anytime soon between these two parties. And it's interesting to me that Jerry Jones is really going into this season with a philosophy of it's a prove it year for everyone, right? You have Dak playing on without a deal. He's going to be going into a contract year. CeeDee Lamb doesn't have a deal either. Neither does Micah Parsons. And even Mike McCarthy is entering this season as a lame duck head coach. You rarely see that in the NFL, a head coach going into a season with just 1 year left on his deal. And I just think when I look at this Cowboys team, they have some serious blow-up potential. To be honest, I wasn't even expecting CeeDee Lamb to hold out, but the fact that he's not at Cowboy camp is a big concern to me. I don't know if Dallas was expecting that, but they better get a deal done with him sooner rather than later. And I just think the bottom line is Dak Prescott is not going to be the Cowboys quarterback after this season. And I think he's going to be the best quarterback we've probably ever seen hit true free agency. You've rarely seen a quarterback that's accomplished as much as him, especially coming off of such a good year. Well, I was thinking about that, but, Brady clearly, like, Dak is in his prime right now. Brady was older. He was just coming off a pretty down year for his standards. Dak just had the best year of his career, you could argue. And Dallas is about to let him go. That's not really something we've ever seen before. You know what I mean? So
no, I get it. Yeah, I get it. I see where the angle you're coming from. The greatest of all time is dangling on the free agent market. You may want to go get that man, but Dak Prescott is in his prime. I got you.
Yeah. So I just find that interesting. And I just feel like he's going to get a crazy contract. He's going to become the highest paid quarterback, highest paid player in the NFL. And really the only way I see him staying in Dallas is if he could lead them, as you mentioned, to their first NFC championship game since 1995. But to be honest, I don't see that happening, especially this year. So I think this will be Dak's last year in Dallas. I think this team has major blow-up potential, and they better get things situated with CeeDee Lamb. I'll have Dak at number 10. And one last point on Dak. I think I said this on the show, too, a couple weeks back. I think he's bound to be a Raider. That team is just desperate for some star power in Vegas. I think they're desperate for a quarterback. Just remember I said that. I think Dak Prescott will be a Raider at this time next year after they sign him to a crazy contract extension that will make him the highest paid quarterback
they need him
in the NFL.
They need him.
No doubt. At number 9, Lil, I'm going to go with a guy that you just mentioned on your list. I believe you had him at number 10, but I'm going to go with Jared Goff of the Detroit Lions. And I think you made some good points on Goff. I'm just going to say it right now. Like, this guy's a very good quarterback, and he's someone that I think has just been pretty disrespected throughout his career. Like, this is a guy that was a former number 1 overall pick, and he led the Rams to the Super Bowl. And overall, he's just been consistent and very productive. And I don't think he gets enough credit for that. And Lil, it's funny, you had a hot take on Jared Goff and, his career up to this point. So I'm going to match you with that as well. I think that this Lions team overall, 1-53, is better than the Rams team that Jared Goff led to the Super Bowl in 2018. I still don't think Brad Holmes and this Lion organization gets enough credit for taking Jared Goff and sending Matthew Stafford to Detroit when they could have done the same thing, but with the 49ers and sent Stafford to San Francisco for Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, they evaluated, no, we don't want Jimmy G. We want Jared Goff, and that is probably the best decision the Lions franchise has ever made. And one nugget I wanted to leave you guys with on Goff and the Lions, 14 out of their 17 games this season are going to be played in a dome. I think that's huge. Like, we know that there are only two real things you could criticize Jared Goff for, and that's he's not good in bad weather. He's not very good. They lost to the Bears last year. Like, he struggles and has struggled for a long time when he's playing in the cold, and he crumbles under pressure. Well, you don't have to worry about that first thing. And I'll say this to end. If I'm Dan Campbell, I'm really trying to prioritize getting that number 1 seed in the NFC. So the entire conference will have to go through your building. They'll have to go through Ford Field in order to get to the Super Bowl, because I do think if the Lions were to get that number 1 seed, which I do think is extremely possible, I don't think anyone's going to be able to go into that building and beat them. I was so impressed by that playoff atmosphere they showed last year. They won both their playoff games at home. If the 49ers had to go to Detroit in the NFC Championship game, I definitely think the Lions would have won. So if I'm Dan Campbell, that's a real priority for me, is making sure I get that number 1 seed in the NFC, and the entire rest of the conference has to go through Detroit to get there. I will have Jared Goff at number 9. I'm going to go with Aaron Rodgers at number 8. And I understand that Rodgers is coming off a major Achilles injury, and at his age, that is something that could be concerning. But I just wanted to remind everyone, this guy hasn't played football in a full year, but the last time he played football in 2023, or 2022, I should say, I understand it wasn't a vintage Rodgers season, and he wasn't the guy that the previous 2 years won back-to-back MVPs. But he did finish that season with 26 touchdowns and 12 interceptions, which isn't bad at all. And he was playing with a pretty bad thumb. That was an injury that just no one talks about. And that Packers team had just lost Devontae Adams. The last 2 seasons, Aaron Rodgers was completely healthy. His team, he won the MVP, and his team was the number 1 seed in the NFC. Aaron Rodgers, also one thing I'll mention, he's only had a top 5 defense 1 time in his entire career. And that year, in 2010, the Packers won the Super Bowl. He's going to be throwing the ball this year to a pair of former first-round picks in Garrett Wilson and Mike Williams. And we know that other crazy Rodgers stat, that he's only thrown 1 career touchdown to a guy that was a first-round pick, which in my opinion is one of the most mind-blowing stats in the NFL. So he's going to be throwing to 2 guys in Wilson and Williams, who are very talented, 2 former first-round picks. And I just think if you're someone that's doubting the Jets this season, I think the only reason why has to be just because of injuries and the fact that this is an older team that could have some questions in that department, because Aaron Rodgers is coming back from an injury. We know Tyron Smith is injury prone. Mike Williams has had some trouble staying healthy. Like, if you're someone that doesn't believe in the Jets, the only argument I'm really willing to hear is injuries are just a concern for you, and this is an older team.
And they're a cursed franchise, you got black cats running around that stadium. Like, I believe in those type of things, but carry on.
Yeah, laundry's laundry. We'll see how it goes. But the offensive line is revamped. And again, I just don't think we realize how good of a situation this is for both parties, Rodgers and the Jets. I will have him at number 8. Moving on in my list, I'm going to have Justin Herbert of the Chargers at number 7. And for me, I just think every single season when we do this list, Herbert is one of the more difficult guys to judge. And we all know, like, there wasn't a bigger critic of Brandon Staley than me. And I was just a guy that really always called him a massive fraud. And that was going back to his first season as a head coach, when he was referencing members of the media by their name in press conferences. I just kind of sniffed this guy out. And it was one of the times I was proven to be right. Now, I'm really happy that the Chargers hired a coach in Jim Harbaugh, who obviously is a massive upgrade over Staley, because it actually allows us to judge Justin Herbert and see what he really is, because all the excuses are now really out the window as far as I'm concerned. And the Herbert argument to me is interesting, because I feel like, kind of similar to Brock Purdy, he's one of those guys where on whatever side of the argument you fall, it's extreme. You think he's either a top 5 quarterback and the Chargers organization has just, done wrong by him, and Jim Harbaugh is going to come in and immediately this thing is going to take off. Or you think, oh, no, Herbert didn't get enough blame. He blew a 30-point lead in the playoffs, which is something we've never seen before, and he deserves more criticism. I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. I do think he is worthy of being ranked in the top 10 of this list. He set the rookie passing yardage record in 2020. And when you watch him, the natural talent is off the charts. But I also understand there have been a lot of close games that the Chargers have been in over the course of the last few years where I thought, man, maybe he could have just taken over the game. The Dallas game on Monday Night Football last year is one that comes to mind for me. Or like I mentioned, the Jaguars playoff game when they blew that 31-0 lead. I would have just loved to see Herbert take over that game. And unfortunately, he didn't. I thought, too, last year, the hiring of Kellen Moore, even though I've never been a big Brandon Staley guy, I thought the hiring of Moore was at least going to make the Chargers offense a lot better, but it didn't. Like, their offense downgraded. That was not something I had on my bingo card last year, that the Chargers offense was going to be worse under Kellen Moore than it was under Joe Lombardi. That was not something I saw coming, but that's what happened. So I'm looking forward to watching Herbert with Harbaugh, even though the fit with Greg Roman is a little questionable. And I've said this many times. I just think this team is really going to regret passing on Malik Neighbors in the draft. Like, when you have Josh Palmer as your number one wide receiver, that's not good enough. I will have Justin Herbert at number 7. At number 6, I will go with my final NFC quarterback. I find it ironic a little bit that both of us had our highest NFC quarterback ranked at this spot in number 6 on the list. And they're two different guys. And it's also funny that they actually play each other week 1 in Brazil. I'm going to go with Jalen Hurts of the Philadelphia Eagles at number 6 on my list. And I brought up some crazy stats when it comes to Rodgers, but I have one for Jalen Hurts as well that I think I mentioned last week too. He's had 9 different play callers over the course of the last 9 seasons playing football. That's dating back to his Alabama days. And I totally understand that Hurts didn't play well to end last season. It really just felt to me that whole Eagles locker room was fractured. The team fell apart. But one thing I'll say about Hurts is that you could no longer say that Nick Sirianni was some kind of quarterback elevator. I've always thought that he was a little overrated dating back to that Super Bowl. I thought he made decisions in that game that cost the Eagles. And if you were watching that Eagle team, it was really Shane Steichen, not Sirianni, who was the main guy, in my opinion, that was responsible for all the success that team had. But last year, that Eagles team started 11-1, and even when the Eagles were winning, there were plenty of people who were saying, like, this team is not actually that good. The start of the season is just a fluke. And it turns out they were right. That team was not good. We saw what happened to them to end the season. I was one of those people. You were, and I give you credit for that. That was a great call. But I think when you look back at that, you have to give Hurts credit for the fact that they started 11-1. He dragged that team to that start. And I just kind of think the narrative around him is kind of being spun not correctly. Like, the fact that they started 11-1, I know that Hurts really struggled to end last season, but again, I think he deserves more credit for that great start the team had. If you look at his numbers, he's thrown for nearly 4,000 yards in each of the last 2 seasons. I think his performance in that Super Bowl against the Chiefs was one of the greatest individual game performances I've ever seen, despite being on the losing side. And it's even more impressive now knowing just how good this Chiefs defense is. I think that Saquon Barkley is going to have a Christian McCaffrey-like impact on the Eagles offense, like CMC did with San Francisco. And although I was just pretty critical of Kellen Moore when talking about Justin Herbert, there's no denying, as our guy Dujane chimes in, there's no denying that Kellen Moore is a massive upgrade over Brian Johnson, who was completely in over his head last year and had zero business being an NFL offensive coordinator. I'm expecting Hurts to have a monster bounce back season, and I'm expecting him to show us why the Eagles made the correct decision in investing in him and making him one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league. I think he's going to have a massive bounce back year. I'm looking forward to watching him. I will have Jalen Hurts of the Eagles at number 6. So to recap my portion of the list, I will have Dak Prescott at number 10. I will have Jared Goff at number 9, Aaron Rodgers at number 8, Justin Herbert at number 7, and to wrap it up, Jalen Hurts at number 6.
So to my guy, Dujane, for plugging us in 2 different platforms. I saw him with the Facebook and now with the YouTube. I appreciate the views, my brother. I'm going to introduce our co-host here on the show who's in the studio, Zay, and then we can kind of respond to each other's rankings And yeah, I'm gonna bring in my guy Zay. Zay is in the building. What's going on, Zay?
How's it going, y'all? How's it going?
I'm
Chilling,
good,
man.
man. I'm doing good, man. Happy to have you on and join us here. You know, Zach gave his 10 through 6. I gave my 10 through 6. And I know you was able to hear some of Zach's in the background. I'm in the studio. But yeah, you have any thoughts so far about what we have thus far?
Yeah, I think to start off with your list, CJ Stroud at number 6 is very interesting. I think he is a top 5 quarterback. I think at the end of the season, he'll show that he's a top 3 quarterback. I think if he played those 2 games that he missed last year, we could potentially talk about a 5,000 yard passer in his rookie season. That's how good of a year he was having. Besides that Jets game where he got hurt, that made him miss those 2 games against Tennessee and Cleveland. Very tough games, but CJ Stroud has shown us he's able to dice up the best of the defenses. Just his ability to throw the football to anybody at any given time. He just knows how to throw the tight windows. He's shown an extreme level of talent last year, and I think is gonna kind of follow up this upcoming season. Can't wait to see the top 5 list when it comes out. Please like and subscribe to the channel so you can view that as well. Justin Herbert, Zach, I think is an interesting one because the Chargers have 0 wide receiver 1 options currently. Right now, I've heard that Lade McConkey, I believe his name is Lad McConkey. He is the wide receiver 1, as it appears. He's the best receiver, according to scouts, in terms of what's happening over there. I think that's gonna dispel Herbert. Herbert might not even be a top 10 quarterback this season, based on what's been talked about in terms of wide receivers over there. It's tough to give a rookie that responsibility of wide receiver 1 and expect him to put up numbers and to assist with Herbert. I think they're gonna have a lot of trouble trying to replace or replenish the production that Keenan Allen and Mike Williams provided the Chargers, and it's gonna be extremely tough to see if I keep messing up his name. It's Quentin Johnston.
Yeah.
If he is gonna show up and show out this upcoming season, despite what's happening in training
You
camp.
gotta catch the ball,
And
man.
so
That's it.
it's interesting. You know, I believe the list is based upon what we know these guys could get to. We all believe that Justin Herbert is a top 10 quarterback. We've seen the talent. We all believe that CJ Stroud could be in that top 10. Even a guy like Rodgers, right? We've seen Rodgers do it for years, but coming off that Achilles injury, can he do it? Especially with this, as Lil said, Black Cat Jets, where something always goes wrong. And it's interesting to see what these guys can do. But I think the biggest questions is like, could CJ Stroud be in that top 5 conversation at the end of this season? And is Justin Herbert going to bounce out of that top 10 conversation based on what's happening in that Chargers training camp? I think those are right there the 2 biggest questions that I really have from either list.
Black Cat Jets. That's funny. I mean, in regards to Herbert, and I really hate to leave everybody on the cliffhanger because I still have yet to rank that dude. You know, obviously, he's in my top 5, but I do feel the need to kind of just like give y'all a little appetizer on why he may be in my top 5, simply off the fact that Zay made a valid point in regards to the main criteria. Obviously, there's a variety of criterias, my fault, that we use to make up a list like this. I know for myself, it's a variety of things, but you know, a major part of it is projecting, and obviously the wide receiving issue, the lack of wide receiver depth, and having that clear alpha number 1 could kind of hinder, you would think, his season individually, thus me questioning why I have him in my top 5. But I think just to leave us on a little cliffhanger, but give you a little bit of appetizer, it's just I think for me, you know, I still think a lot of people is underrating the fact that Justin Herbert's best year was when they ran a lot of play action, when they didn't have, like when Keenan Allen was hurt around that time. And I remember he was throwing to I think it was DeAndre Carter, and Palmer was his number
Are
one
you
and
talking about
two.
his rookie year?
I'm talking about his
Or
rookie year. Yeah,
okay.
they ran the football a lot, you know, and it's not going to be as much as they're going to run the football now with Jim Harbaugh. Obviously, he's a guy that's ground and pound, and I think being able to utilize that play action is going to help these wide receivers get open and take some of that stress of press coverages and stuff like that. So I do think a lot of people is anticipating a fall off as far as production, but I think winning may be going upper more than production, because it's one thing for Justin Herbert to put up these nice numbers, cool, but are you winning? And he hasn't been winning. So I think we may see a slight decline in the production, but I think the winning can go up. And if he could keep some of that production along with the winning, that will make him a top 5 guy.
Yeah, Zay, I don't know if you heard me say this when I was talking about Herbert, but I just feel like it's an extreme, kind of like Brock Purdy. You either think, ironically, that's exactly the case here. You either think he's going to be a top 5 quarterback, or he is a top 5 quarterback, like Will just said, or you would have him outside the top 10, which I'm pretty sure you just said. So I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. And
it's funny, Zach, too. My fault for intruding here. I'm going to just keep this short. I don't think Justin Herbert, because a lot of people is going to fear that the running game is going to take away his shine. I don't think excuse me, what's the guy named Justin Herbert? I ain't blanking here. Justin Herbert, my guy. How could I forget your name? I don't think that Justin Herbert needs volume to show that he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league, because of when he do make certain throws, we're like, oh my God, how did he make that throw? So I think there's certain guys that may need that volume to show that they can make those, like Jared Goff, Brock Purdy. They need some volume to show that they can make a special throw here and there. With Justin Herbert, he just needs a couple throws, and he's going to make a throw that, oh my God, like we're going to be like, oh wow, that's a top 10 Sports Center top play right there. So, I still think as long as they're winning, he could be mentioned right up there.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
I agree. But when we're talking about Justin Herbert, right, in the running game, how much faith do you have in J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, who both are injury riddled every
I like Gus
single
Edwards,
year?
but
They're hurt. Like they're productive when they're playing, but when they're hurt, that's it. Like, and then that's the big issue, is guys getting hurt, especially on the Chargers. Guys get hurt all the time. You bring in 2 injury riddled running backs with a coaching system who heavily uses running backs. Running back usage is extremely high. So these guys are already beaten and wear down. I know they're coming back from surgery. Hopefully they're 100% playing the game, and they're going to need to be, because Harbaugh's going to wear them down to 0. And if they're banking on the play action and the running game being the success recipe for Justin Herbert being that top 10 caliber quarterback this year, we're going to be in for a rude awakening, because the receiving core is not there. Their hands are not there. We're not talking about the footwork that will create separation. We're seeing it in training camp alone. And the Chargers don't have an elite defense to stop them besides Derwin James. So it's like, if they're looking bad in training camp, I can only imagine what's going to happen when they're playing against their division. They're playing against other teams in the AFC. I don't know what to anticipate for this Chargers team, but I think Zach said it well. It's like, you're rather going to rank them top 10. It's weird because Justin Herbert is one of the weirdest guys to rank, because you rather think he's a top 5 quarterback or he's outside the top 10. There's no like middle. And I think number 6 is like it's strange, because like it's so many points to go against him, and there's so many points to say no, he's like right there in number 6 above this guy and that guy, because what he could do with his arm, he could throw down a field, he has good vision, but it's just like, for whatever reason, he hasn't put it all together yet. He's a young quarterback. He's gonna figure it out eventually. I just feel like with the weapons around him, is it, like you said, Lil, is it hindering him from getting to that point? Or is it only going to make him better because he has less to work with and he has to go deeper into his arsenal bag to get those yards down the field, get those touchdowns?
For the record, like, I had him at number 7, and I would be more inclined to rank him a little higher if they drafted Malik Neighbors. That's how big of an impact I think he would have had. And I agree with you, Zay, about the receivers. They're just flat out not good enough. I think 7 is a fair spot, though, for him, because I'm kind of that middle that doesn't really exist. I do think when you watch him, he's clearly an elite talent. And based on the eye test, sure, he deserves a spot in the top 10. That's why I had him at number 7. But at the same time, he's going into his 5th year. The winning has to come eventually. And I just think that although it might not necessarily come this year, I personally don't think it will. I do think 7 was a fair spot.
I want to throw us a bone in here before we get off this topic in regards to somebody that we talked about, Jordan Love. Obviously on my list, he just got paid his contract, and Tua just got his contract. I think it's appropriate that we could kind of like talk about that. Obviously, we ranked Dak here. He's yet to get paid. And we kind of did a segment last week, so we don't got to really dive too deep into this. But I think for me, looking at Jordan Love and the contract that he's given, a lot of people think it's risky business. But I think for me, and I always tell people this when it comes to quarterback contracts, it's not about looking at, okay, he's going to make 53 million per year or 54 million per year or 55 million per year, but he's not a top 10 quarterback. He hasn't done anything yet. If we're looking at contracts that way, then we are sadly mistaken. And every time somebody gets paid, we are going to be confused, scratching our heads. That's not how it works. Timing is everything. When it's your time to get paid, because the quarterback position in the NFL is so valuable that even if you're a top 10 guy or borderline top 10, there's a ongoing need to fulfill the position. Just like how UPS is always hiring, just like how Amazon is always hiring, okay? The NFL quarterback position is always an ongoing need. A team always going to need a quarterback if they want to compete. So I think the main thing we should be focused on is the amount of years on the deal. Is it a 4-year deal or 5-year deal? Because the shorter the deal, the more leverage the quarterback gets in getting another contract that you can add on to that and getting more money. So I think we need to look at contracts a little bit differently here instead of that, oh, he's making $55 million per year. He's not a top 5 quarterback. No, it's Tua's time to get paid. It's Jordan Love's time to get paid, because if you don't pay him now, that's only going to go up the market value. And that's why I think when we come back to Dak Prescott, Jerry Jones is only putting more money in Dak Prescott's pockets by waiting, by not paying him. If you don't pay him today, right now, he might get $60 million. If they don't pay him today, then he's going to walk as a free agent, and he's going to get double that. So I think Jerry Jones needs to dish out the checkbook, and I'll leave it with that.
Real quick, and I think I want to touch base on the Jordan Love, and I think, Lil, you stated it well. In terms of Jordan Love, right? He had such a phenomenal year. It was inconsistent for the beginning, but then that second half of the season, he turned it up and things of that nature. We have to understand they were playing a weak schedule last year. We're now going to see him against a tougher schedule this season. What's going to happen now? I'm not talking about their division, right? We're not talking about the Bears. We're not talking about the Lions or the I'm blanking on
the Vikings.
Team. Thank you. I don't know why I was playing on the Vikings. We're not talking about those teams. We're talking about outside of that division. They got higher ranking teams now. They got teams that got a little better. Let's see what he does against those teams. Because yes, he did batter the Dallas Cowboys in that playoff game. It was a phenomenal showing. Great. Also, I'm expecting them to step down a little bit. I'm expecting that defense to take a couple steps down. I'm expecting that offense to take a couple notches down. Is Jordan Love still going to be at that top 10 quarterback that we saw last year in those dire moments that they need him? I don't know yet. I'm not sold on it yet. I got to see what he does the first couple weeks of the season and be like, that's the top 10 quarterback. Because there was times he had games, 3 touchdowns, looks phenomenal. The next week, 3 interceptions. What are we doing, Jordan? What are we doing? Is it Jordan Love or Jordan Hate? What are we doing? So I got to see what happens with him, because there's so many ooh and ah moments. He has flashes. That's the problem. He has so many flashes of excellence, and then he has so many flashes of stupidity. One of them being the across the field throw, middle of the field throw.
I think we got to remember this guy's still young, and even though he's technically a vet by the years that he's been in the league, he's still young because he just started last year. I think that's going to come with the territory. One more point that I want to make, and then Zay, you could finish, or Zach, you could come in, is that I think when you talk about the quarterback position in the NFL, there's no patience in both mirrors of it. For example, you have the situation where your quarterback is on a rookie deal, and if he doesn't show you anything, you're going to be quick to pull the rug because you know you got to pay that man. It's all the centerpiece of it is paying the guy. But you look at it from a mirror perspective. Okay, you're not showing me life. I'm going to pull the plug. Justin Fields, ally. I'm going to pull the plug. So many other quarterbacks. I don't know why my brain is not clicking like how it normally is. But we pulled the plug, right? Baker Mayfield. We pulled the plug because we got to pay you. And you look at it the other way. Yeah, we're going to pay you because you're going to be more expensive. And you showed me just enough. Because I think people have a right to wonder if Jordan Love, what he did last year, was an aberration. Where's Jordan Love is the real Jordan Love? Is it the first half or the second half? But guess what? He showed so much flashes in the second half. There's like, okay, we got to be impatient because if we don't pay you now, we got to pay you more later. So I think there's a level of, impatience when you talk about paying a quarterback on either spectrum because of how valuable the position is and how the money is always going to be there for that position.
So I'll make my point on this. It's funny. My initial instinct the other day when I saw the Jordan Love news, and look, I understand this is kind of an uncommon opinion because the Packers have literally went from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers to now Jordan Love. And to be honest with you guys, a big reason why I was a little bit hesitant on Love at first was just playing the odds. We've literally never seen a team go from elite quarterback to elite quarterback to elite quarterback. The Packers are literally, if Love is the player many people expect, like that's just an aberration. We rarely see that. And I just think the Packers' strategy of how they handled the Jordan Love situation, I've said it since they drafted him. I didn't like the pick. And a big reason because of that is Love didn't hit the field until his 4th season, and he had 9 really good games. But I don't feel comfortable making someone that had 9 really good games the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. The fact is, like, Will, we discussed this last week, and I even brought it up today. CJ Stroud, I think, is the prime example of why when you draft a quarterback, in most situations, 99% of the time, you're going to want to play them right away because CJ Stroud, we know after just 1 year, the Texans hit a grand slam out of the ballpark with that pick. And immediately after just 1 year on his rookie contract, they have the ability to bring in talent and make their team better. And if all things go right, there's a good chance that the Texans could be a Super Bowl contender this year. And that could be the case for the next 3 years until they have to pay CJ Stroud. I don't love the fact that the Packers were basically forced to do this with Jordan Love after he had 9 good games. And that's his entire rookie contract, because the first 3 years of his rookie contract, he was just sitting on the bench. So I partly agree. I do think the Packers didn't really have a choice. This was a move they had to make, but that's why I didn't love the Love draft pick at first, was because they had to sit him 3 years to start, and they kind of wasted his whole rookie contract because he wasn't on the field.
I mean, you talk about playing the odds, and I respect that. You know, some people just didn't think that the Packers could luck out again when it comes to drafting a quarterback that can win an MVP, that can lead a team to a Super Bowl. Again, what are the odds? You got teams like Chicago that haven't had a 4,000-yard passer ever. You had teams like the Commanders who haven't had a 4,000-yard passer for a 3rd straight year since the 90s with Mark Weepin. You have teams like the Jets
the Patriots
that haven't had one.
Look at the Patriots. What have they done at quarterback since Brady left?
Exactly. So I get the odds, you know, but I know this may be a cheesy analogy, but there was a guy that I went to school with back in high school. I ain't gonna say his name, but he always used to find money on the floor individually. Sometimes we'll go out as a group and hang out, and then he'll be the one to find the money. Always find the money. Like, man, can I find $20 on the floor? It just always happened to him. Sometimes it is luck involved, but sometimes it is how you merge, how you go after the guy and merge him into a system, have him sit a couple years, because that's how Aaron Rodgers got started. He sat and he learned. You have a era now where guys are starting week 1. Caleb Williams going to start, and I think they did a good job of building a team for him to start. But Bryce Young should have had started last year with that roster with no offensive lineman. This guy was getting decked in the preseason, and he had no number 1 wide receiver. And everybody is debating me, you know, woohoo! They named him a starter before the daggone preseason. Yeah, they botched that development, man. Same thing with Trevor Lawrence. So I think when we realize that there is value, unless you're building a team around a guy like Caleb Williams and the Bears have done around him, there is value in sitting back, learning the playbook, and easing into the flow. All you got to do is take the Packers playbook, and maybe you have quarterback confidence for a change.
Please like and subscribe for all the up-to-date content. You've been slinging shows left and right, slinging content left and right. Please don't miss anything. If you do, like, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a question, something you may want to answer, something you may have. All ideas are great ideas. Nothing's a dumb question.